Welcome, and thank you for joining this virtual event. Kindly please note, this live broadcast is being recorded. Please ensure that you have the correct audio output or device selected to hear the speakers and presenters. We encourage you to please submit all your topic-related questions to the speakers using the questions and answers function on the Zoom control panel located at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you do experience any technical difficulties, please feel free to let us know using the chat function on the Zoom control panel. Thank you for your attention.
Hello and welcome to everyone. I'm Liesel Meyer and I'm part of the Oxford team. I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to dial into our webinar today. If you're in this webinar, you've most likely received a visit from one of our sales consultants during the course of September. In our recent visit, we promoted the DHET-approved Communication in 6 student book and lecturer guide. That now finally concludes our full series of approved titles on N4, N5, and N6. Before we get into today's webinar, I would like to first tell you a little bit about us, Oxford University Press. We are an award-winning educational publisher with over 100 years of publishing experience in South Africa. Oxford, as we are more commonly known as, publishes for all educational sectors, including schools, higher education, and of course, DHET. We recognize the power of education to uplift and equip individuals, and we are deeply rooted and committed to changing lives through education. We strive to develop and deliver high quality and affordable educational materials to learners, students, teachers, and lecturers. Oxford University Press is South Africa's #1 dictionary and literature publisher. We publish more than 2,700 books in 11 official home languages. Our books are well researched and we pride ourselves in the delivery of high service standards. One of the most anticipated changes within the DHET arena is the updated syllabi in key subject areas. We, as Oxford University Press, we welcome these changes as it speaks to our core mission, transforming lives through education. There's a renewed focus from the government towards DHET institutions and the upskilling of young people and preparing our youth to enter into the workplace confidently. Also, to have graduates that possess the 21st century skills required in the workplace. You, as lecturers, well, you play a critical part in the delivery of these new skills to our youth. You stand at the front line of the educational system, and it's our privilege to guide you through these changes. We understand that these changes and shifts, as we respond to the demand of the 4th Industrial Revolution, can cause uncertainty. But just by choosing to attend this webinar, you've taken the first step in responding to these changes. Our main aim with this webinar is to take you by the hand and carefully go through the changes of the curriculum. We will guide you on best practice for teaching and what the changes might mean to you and your students practically. I will now be handing over to our communications expert. Gugulethu Yinyani is a lecturer at Umfolozi TVET College. She's got more than 23 years of experience in education, both in schools and within the TVET sector. Gugulethu has a master's degree in education and recently completed a proofreading and copy editing course. Gugulethu has held positions as the chief marker and moderator for communications in 6 and is an assessor and moderator with the ETDP CETA. We hope that you will have a renewed outlook on this subject, and we look forward to a very engaging virtual workshop. We encourage you to please raise your questions using the Q&A function on the Zoom function at the bottom of your screen. Without any further ado, I hand over to our subject expert on the matter, Gugulethu.
I would like to thank Oxford University Press for their kind invitation to present at this virtual workshop. Thank you, Liesl Meyer, for your kind introduction. Good day, colleagues, and welcome to the webinar. In this webinar, we are going to look at the changes in the Communication N5 and N6 syllabi. We will then discuss how these changes will affect the learning content, our teaching methods, which is also known as didactic guidelines, the academic year, and our assessments. We will also show you how the Succeed In series can support our teaching and learning, and how to implement the new syllabi successfully in the classroom environment. As we have seen, colleagues, the DHET has reviewed many of the TVET subject syllabi. And the reason for the changes is to ensure that we prepare our students to be ready for the working environment. Our teaching methods has to move towards a more practical and modern approach through the incorporation of the modern technology as well as the modern terminology. The N5 syllabus update is already being taught. However, the N6 syllabus update will be implemented in the first semester of 2022. So this means as lecturers, we will have to be prepared to update our teaching strategies and our resources so that we can accommodate all the changes in the syllabus. We will now look at the overview of the changes in the Communication N5 syllabus. All the learning outcomes have been renumbered. As you can see, colleagues, the previous syllabus had 12 modules and the new syllabus has now 13 modules. So this includes the introduction of the new concepts such as Module 9, which is correspondence in the advertising world. And this shows that we are moving with the times. Module 3 now includes social media, which is also relevant in the business world. Outdated concepts such as the telegram have been removed. Modern terminology has been introduced throughout the syllabus. Modern technology such as electronic mass media and social media has been introduced so as to make sure that we are relevant in the working world. So this was an overview, and I am now going to go through all the modules and discuss the biggest changes. In Module 1, which is organizational communication, a new content has been added, and this is the corporate culture and the understanding that there is a big difference in the cultural bands in our country. So the students as well as lecturers need to know the difference between a corporate culture and a college culture. For example, being late at work is not acceptable in the corporate culture and can result in a dismissal. So another content that has been added is the understanding of the forms of communication channels. The student needs to know that who they need to report to in the working environment. Also, a new LO, which is 1.7, the components of management terminology has been added. This means that our students need to understand the language that is used in the management and in the working environment. In Module 2, which is known as formulation of goals, aims, and objectives in social planning, and emphasis is made on time management. Our students must be able to perform their duties successfully and everything that is expected of them. Students should be taught the importance of using time constructively and the setting of goals, as this has an impact on the productivity in the working environment. A new content has been added, which is managing social media and Pareto principle. So in Module 3, social and mass media communication in advertising has included criticisms against advertising. This is necessary with the forward movement of digital advertising and communication. It helps our students to recognize social bullying happening in social media and how to deal with it. So it is important that they are aware of that. For Module 4, which is presentation communication, An emphasis is made on the different ways in which presentation can be conducted and the different tools that can be used during the presentation, one of them being the webinar that we are currently using. In Module 5, Multicultural Communication in the Business World, this module ensures that there is no unsuccessful communication in the working environment. A new LO on stereotyping, prejudice, and other factors which may rise to unsuccessful communication has been added. This has been done to ensure that there is no ineffective communication in the working environment, and it will also help students to understand the messages which are sent through nonverbal communication. For Module 6, this is language usage. This module is still there. In the working environment, the correct usage of language is very important. Therefore, the emphasis is put on the correct use of language. Incorrect use of language in the working environment is not acceptable. For example, to make spelling mistakes and to do incorrect referencing. The incorrect use of language, especially in professional documents, could lead to legal disputes. The use of direct and indirect speech in the minutes of the meeting is also important to focus on. So as lecturers, we are expected to spend time teaching these concepts. We need to ensure that our students use a language that is applicable to the working environment. This module has been combined with Module 12. For Module 7, which is concise communication, a new learning outcome has been introduced, which is the forms and emails. Forms are crucial because the students entering the working environment will be faced with different types of forms that they need to complete. For example, they will need to complete the bank forms, the medical aid application forms, etc. Or they could be asked or required to design the forms for the company that they are working for. Lecturers teaching communication can team up with the IP lecturers for practical application, and this is known as best practice. They can teach their theory part in their classrooms, and then the students can apply the practical skills in the IP class. As for the emails, which are also included, every student is supposed to have an email address as they will be using them in the business world. In Module 8, which is business letters, it is still there. However, we need to focus on some of the important things. The important thing here is the correct layout of the letters. Lecturers should focus more on the layout of the letters. For example, in the address, the name of the city should be written in capital letters. Students should be able to create things like a letterhead as they will be required to do so in the working environment. A new learning outcome has been added, which is an employment letter. In Module 9 is a completely new title that has been added, which is correspondent in the advertising world. The content from different modules have been reorganized into Module 9, so this has made our life easy. A new LO, which is classified advertisement, has been added. For Module 10, which is meeting correspondent, in this module, the lecturers are mostly requested to spend time teaching this section as it is applicable to the working environment. The new LO, the difference between special and general notices and agendas, has been added. Another LO has been added, which is a writing of incident or accident report, which is very essential to teach. In Module 11 has been incorporated into this module, which is Module 10. So when the students enter the working environment, they will be required to write reports of incidents or accidents. Therefore, lecturers should ensure that the students are ready to write the reports. As shown earlier, the new learning outcomes for Module 11 and 12 have been incorporated into Modules 4, 6, and 10. Please note that Module 13 is not examined, but it is for enrichment only. Colleagues, as you can see from N5 slides, on the surface, it looks like there haven't been many changes, but enough has changed that we will need to update our notes and class handouts. We will now move on to N6 changes, but I want to emphasize specifically that all the aforementioned applies to N5 and N6, but for N6, we will need to change the content of our classroom exam papers to include more case studies. If we don't do this, the students will struggle with the new exam papers. The N6 syllabus has been changed from 13 modules up to 11 modules. So the DHET has summarized the syllabus. In answer to this summary, the fact that modules 6 to 11 are revision and the change to a more practical teaching method, the Succeed in Communication N6 student book has presented these modules in case studies to help the students to adjust to the new didactic guidelines. This overview shows specific changes in the syllabus, such as that all the learning outcomes have been renumbered, modules 12 and 13 have been removed, and also outdated content has been removed, especially in module 5, TV and radio interviewed have been removed. So now we're going to look at the changes from module 1. In module 1, the new LO that has been added is motivation theories, which includes Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Herzberg's theory. These two have been added and emphasized that the lecturers should distinguish between the two theories, and then the students should be able to understand these theories and apply them to case studies, which is one of the reasons why the syllabus has moved towards a more practical way of teaching. Module 2 has added a new LO 2.5.2, which is formulating the problem in writing and the benefits thereof. Another LO, which is 2.5.4, criteria and techniques applied in evaluating alternative solutions. Another LO 2.5.7, which is categorizing the decision made into optimum, satisfactory, and suboptimum. The emphasis should be on the application of the concept to case studies. This requires us as lecturers to improve our teaching approaches, as shown in the example on the slide. In module 3, it shows that conflict is now viewed in two ways, which is traditional view and modern view. So a comparison between the modern view and traditional view of conflict should be made, and an emphasis should be made on the modern view of conflict in the work situation. As you can see, a lot has changed in module 5. Some sections have been removed from the syllabus. For example, we no longer have radio and television interviews, which were a huge part of module 5. Some items have been added, for example, the types of interviews, which is a revision from N4 syllabus. An emphasis is made on the use of role play and case studies in the classroom, so as to facilitate the phases of the interview. The tips on how to get an employer to notice a CV or resume and asking a student for an interview have also been added. So lecturers can make use of videos and online examples on how to make a good first impression before the interview through electronic media such as LinkedIn. Module 6 to Module 11 are a revision and repetition from N5 syllabus. All of these LO changes, as well as other LOs that have not changed, have been covered in depth in the Succeed in Communication student book, which is a N6 book, in the case studies section. You will see in the screenshots that the students are given the opportunity to practice various skills which equip them to successfully navigate the new syllabus. As you will see, the case studies 1 up to 4, they show the list of different skills that are tested. The teaching approach is more practical. Here you can also see how the remaining case studies challenge and empower our students. So now we move to what lecturers need to know about the new syllabi. The lecturers will need to use new resources such as updated textbooks that have more case studies so as to ensure that our teaching is in line with the modern syllabi. Lecturers will have to become familiar with the current didactic or teaching guidelines, that is, teaching using case studies. This is emphasized, colleagues. We have to teach using case studies more often. Lecturers will need updated class activities and handouts that are in line with the changes in the syllabi. As lecturers, we will also need to familiarize ourselves on modern terminology, such as social media, LinkedIn, etc., so as to be able to use it effectively during our teaching and learning. Our lesson plans need to be adjusted to ensure that they are more practical than theory-based. For N6 specifically, we will need to update the content of our classroom assessments to include more case studies. So in meeting the lecturer's needs in terms of teaching and learning, the Succeed in Communication series provides a lecturer's guide which can be used in conjunction with the student book. The lecturer's guide provides lecturers with a ready-to-use teaching plan, which can also be used as a work schedule. This helps us to save time on our side. And a variety of teaching resources and learning tools that can be used in the classroom. The following examples are the case studies, the power breaks, self-assessments, and mock examinations. Other sources include PowerPoint slides, which are available on learning zones, and links to useful websites. Thank you, colleagues, for your time.
Sorry. A warm thank you to our author, Gugulethu, for a very insightful presentation on the revised curriculum. The Succeed in Student Book and Lecturer Guide directly addresses these changes, as well as assists our lecturers with planning and preparational material aligned to student activities that help prepare them for the internal and external examinations. Hello, colleagues. I'm Liesel Meyer, a proud member of the Oxford University Press team. I will co-facilitate the next segment with our lead publisher, Yolandi, to look at the key features of the Oxford Succeed in series. After the segment, we will go into the Q&A session to address some of the questions that has been posted by you. We are already seeing some questions coming in. I want to encourage you to keep on posting questions in the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Without further ado, I hand over to you, Yolandi.
Great, thank you very much, Liesel, and thank you very much to Gugu for that great overview of all the changes that we can see in N5 and N6. So today I just want to go through a little bit more about how the books or the learning material supports the new syllabus and what you can expect from it. Let me just share my screen with you. Give me one seckie. There we go. Okay. So in terms of our textbooks, we go through quite a rigorous quality assurance process. Also part of any new syllabus is that the DHE, we need to create learning material and then submit it to the Department of Higher Education and Training, who then evaluates it against the new syllabus and to their expectations. So we have done that, and our books have been approved. So you can rest assured that it conforms to those standards. Our textbooks are also written by TVET lecturers, people who are actively teaching, and as far as possible, also people who are involved in the exam process. Gugulethu, for example, is one of the examiners for IN6. And one of the most important things for us is that our learning material link to the real world. And as I go through a little bit more detail, you'll see how we do that. Our books are also available as EPUBs. So if you want electronic copies, those are also available. So as we know, most of our TVET students are maybe second or third language English speakers. So one of the elements of the learning material for us that's really important is language support. So there's really a strong focus on making the language as easy as possible for learners to understand. And that means that we define difficult words on the page where it's used, not using dictionary definitions, and also making our content visually appealing. So you'll see there on your screen, the definitions are always put on the page where the words are defined. We use diagrams and images as much as possible to enhance the content. You'll also see that we use key points. So it's like little summaries on a page. So if there's a particularly important aspect of the content that students need to understand, we highlight that in key points. Another way that we support students and lecturers is through our activities, and there are two aspects of the activities. The ones are our power break activities, and they allow students to engage individually or as a group. And then our other assessment is end of module assessment that prepares for exam, and I'll talk about that in a couple of seconds. So for your class activities, they're called power break activities, and you can choose whether or not you do these in class or if you assign them as homework, if you give it as group homework. So you'll see there we've got an example of a power break activity that is individual work. On the other hand, we also have a lot of case studies. As Gugu mentioned in her presentation, one of the big shifts that we've seen, not only in communication, but in computer practice, information processing, all of those subjects that have recently been updated, is that shift towards case studies, to not only be able to regurgitate what you've learned in terms of the theory, but to integrate it into other subjects, into the real world, so that our TVET students, once they leave the classroom, are more equipped to deal with real world examples. So if we stick to assessments, we also have end of module assessments that are closer linked to past exam papers, with this being a new exam that you're going into where the content is stayed the same. We've looked at past exam papers, built our questions around that, and then added similar type of questions that we think could be expected in the upcoming exam. So assessments, part of it is also at the end of a module to do a revisiting of the learning objectives. So at the start of the module, you'll find your learning objectives. They're repeated again at the end of the module with a checklist. So you'll see there we've got the learning objectives as they would be in the syllabus, but then also what have you learned? So this is a learning objective. At the end of the day, what can you do with that learning objective? What is the outcome of that? So you can use that as revision at the end of your module that students can just go through. You can project it on your screen and use that as revision before exams. Then we've got an end of module assessment that has mark allocations. So these are the ones that are based on past exam papers. And this is where students start understanding this type of questions count for 2 marks, this for 4 marks, and we start gearing them up for the more formal exam. That brings us to the progression. How do students work through the syllabus? How do they do the assessments? So at the end of our textbook, we have a mock exam that you can work through with your students, either as homework or in class. And again, we submitted these to the Department of Education. They align to those expectations. So there is just an example of what the mock exam looks like at the end of the book. And another way in which we check progression, not only through your N5 coursework, but also going back is through flashback features. So in N6, you'll have flashbacks to N5, where we pause the content and kind of go, you know, remember what we did in N5, because you're going to need to remember that as we go into N6, which I think is also very important. And students can read through that at their leisure. For lecturers, we understand that it takes a lot of time for you to plan your lessons, to prep. A new syllabus can be quite daunting. So what we've done in our lecturer guides is to have teaching and lesson plan tables. It's merely a guideline for you to use as you start looking at how you're going to integrate the new content. Some colleges, you know, you might have delays in books, you might have later starting dates, you might still have certain COVID protocols in place. So you can use those lesson plans as a guideline and then fit it into what you're doing. So you'll see there an example of a teaching plan where you've got your module, your outcomes. It's mapped to assessment. So whether that's a case study or a power break, it tells you where those particular outcomes are assessed and then what resources you need. So there are examples there of YouTube clips and links that you can follow in order to enhance your learning and teaching. Inside the lecturer guide as well, you have your didactic guidelines. So I would really suggest that the lecturers go through the didactic guidelines. While it looks like a lot of the actual syllabus content hasn't changed, how the approach should be in class, how they need to integrate the different elements is quite important. There's also recommended reading, so recommended references and e-links. As Gugu also mentioned, if you're a prescribing lecturer, you get free access to our learning zone, where the assessments will be interactive, and also those links that you see there, those e-links, will be live. So it's easier for you to click through to them via the learning zone. So just a reminder that we start with the module openers, where you have a flow diagram that maps what you need to work through, your learning objectives as they are in the syllabus, and also our key terms. So that links again, when I spoke earlier about your language accessibility, is what are the major terms that they need to learn in this module. The key terms, again, like the definitions, are defined on the page where they are used. So it's easy for students to access those subject-specific terminology. Then in N6 in particular, the learning material for N6, the second half of the book, really is just 4 big case studies for students to work through. You know, they've done the business letters on management communication and communication in 4, they've done them again on N5, and so on N6 level, we're really expecting that they now know where to put the address, how to sign off a letter. Now it becomes more important to go, okay, in a work environment, my boss is going to ask me to set the agenda, to send it out, to then take the minutes of the meeting, to proofread that, to send it out. So each case study has an integrated approach where students will need to perform multiple tasks that cover just about everything that they've done in communication, all the way from N4. And you'll see the background is they give you a scenario and then different questions with different activities that they need to do. Also in the textbook, as you go through, we use self-guided explanations as much as possible. So to present the information visually as well for students to relate to. So just as a reminder that we have the entire suite now available, from ManCom to Communication in 5 and to Communication in 6. ManCom also includes a CD with some videos that are very useful for interview preparation and those kind of things. And then, yes, if you have any questions, if you haven't seen our books yet and you would really like to see our books, please do contact our sales consultants. The details are up there. We have sales consultants in different provinces to make it easier to connect with you. And if you have any questions, hopefully I can answer them. Unfortunately, our authors are not able to be with us today, but I will try and answer as many as I can. If I can't answer them, we have your email addresses and we'll be sending out answers to the questions that we are not able to answer in this session after the webinar. So I think I'm going to hand back over to Liesel to see what questions there are.
Hi, Yolandi. Okay, I see I'm on. Thank you so much for taking us through the quality assurance model from OUP. We are extremely proud of the impact that our products are making. And thank you so much for just guiding our audience through those key features. All right, so the next part of the session is we'll head over to the questions. I want to encourage our people on the line to keep asking questions, as this is the slot to answer any of those burning questions you might have. So Yolandi, the first one that we have is from Gertrude. She's asking if 4 in 5, is module 4 still examinable?
Yes, nothing has changed there. I think that's the presentation module, I think. Yes, those are still examinable. Nothing has changed there.
Okay, great. Then we've got another question from the audience. Thank you so much for a very insightful session. Could you please elaborate on power break activities for groups? Can you provide us an example?
Ooh, I can. So group activities would be they get an advertisement and they need to discuss whether or not it's good and the reasons why or why not. I think it's quite important in communication to encourage that kind of group work and group discussion, because part of the outcomes of that subject is, do you communicate effectively? Can you bring your ideas across? So we've tried to, with the power breaks in particular, to have a nice mix of individual questions, pair work, and then group work, just to practice what they've done. So what you can do as a lecturer is, group them in the class and then have them go discuss that and give some feedback in your first 5 or 10 minutes of your next lesson when they're all back in class. But I would definitely encourage that.
Great, thanks, Yolandi. Another question from the audience. How do you prepare students for the real world?
So there's multiple ways that we do it. I think the first bit is just after the module opener, we've got a starting point. That is generally a story. So students don't read the learning objectives. It's often long or winded sentences. So what we've tried to do is put a little relatable story at the beginning of every module that follows a character generally that says, this person is having this problem and it needs to be solved, and we're going to help them solve that problem. So that's one of the ways that we do it. You would have seen also that some of the group work requires you to engage with something in the real world. So that's one of the ways that we also do it. We use a lot of case studies, a lot of look at this advertisement. We give them letters and say, engage with this. There are a number of spelling and grammar mistakes. how would you go about fixing them? We also use a lot of examples. So when you have a bit of content that says, you know, maybe talking about effective communication, we have an example of not effective communication. I think a lot of times the learning material gives us the best case scenario, and what we've tried to put in there is not only how to do it, but how also not to do it. And so students make that differentiation, kind of go, oh, okay, no, maybe that kind of SMS speak in a business letter is not the way to go. And then on in sixth, of course, I mean, the entire second half of the book is just case studies, and it's based on real world. So it's in a work environment, and it's really the steps that you would go through in the real world if you had to communicate.
Great, thanks for that, Yolandi. I see there's no follow-up question to that, so I think you've done it justice. All right, then we've got another question from the audience. How do I get access to Learning Zone?
So the Learning Zone you can access if you're a prescribing lecturer. So contact one of our sales reps in your area if you don't have a copy of the book already. So once you prescribe our books to your class, the rep will help you set up a profile. So you as a lecturer, then you just, like you would just register on any website like Facebook, you get access, and on the back end, you'll have your PowerPoint slides, you'll have the live links. Where we can on the Learning Zone as well, the shorter questions, so at the end of the module questions, those multiple choice true and false are also loaded on the Learning Zone, so you can assign them to your students. So you have to be a prescribing lecturer to get access to the Learning Zone.
Great, thanks for that, Yolandi. I think that draws us to the end of our session. Thanks again, Yolandi, for taking us through the quality assurance model and talking, sorry people, real life, taking us through the Oxford features, advantages and benefits. And thank you so much for Gugu in her absence for taking us through the changes in the syllabus. I really hope that the people in this call and the people in the virtual room found this session to be engaging and interesting. And I want to also just thank our attendees for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend today. I know that there's a lot happening on the campus, at campus level at the moment. And I just want to conclude by saying, if you want to speak to any of the sales consultants, please reach out to us. You can drop your email address in the chat box or drop your number in the chat box, and we can give you a call straight after this workshop. And if you would like to receive a copy of our Management Communication in 4 book or Communication in 5 or in 6, we will be happy to bring that to you. And then I also just want to wish you guys the best of luck for term 4. And thank you again for dialing in.